really drive home being an action taker. But there's also a certain amount of value in having that resolve to make a yes decision, but also coupling that with, it doesn't have to be this one.
Yeah.
It can be the next one. If I don't get this one, I don't have to be devastated, and I don't have to pay 20% more than I intended to pay based on my numbers, just so I get it. It's okay. There's another one. Yep. Take action on that one.
And the other side of that is don't buy something because it's cheap.
Yeah. We've both been in that boat.
Welcome to Courageous Stewards, the podcast where legacy meets leadership.
We believe stewardship isn't just about managing resources. It's about multiplying impact, honoring purpose, and building with eternity in mind. Each week, we dive into business-focused discussions on real estate investing on a foundation of faith and family.
We have a desire to inspire listeners with a heart to reclaim their time, talents, and treasures for something greater. Whether you're growing your portfolio, leading a business, or a family, we need to become the best version of ourselves.
This is your space to gain wisdom, walk in courage, and steward what matters most.
Let's build what lasts. Let's lead with love.
Let's become courageous stewards.
Welcome back to another episode of Courageous Stewards Podcast. I'm Sean Skyver.
And I'm Jake Tracy.
And today we're going to be digging in. We've heard this question a lot. We talk to a lot of people that hear what we're doing and are interested. And it's always like, how do I find my first deal? So if you want to know how to buy your first deal, we're going to dig into just how to do that. Now, we want to preface this is going to be very surface level. If we deep dove this topic, we will be here for 2 weeks. The episode would be 2 weeks long. So we're going to stay real topical. We're going to drop some terms, and we're going to try to elaborate a little bit on them, but we've got to keep going for the sake of time. So feel free to dig into some of these words that maybe you don't know as we run through this. But it's a really good tactical, strategic plan to buying your first deal. Everybody wants to sell a course, sell a program, sell a book. We're just going to give this to you on the episode in hopes that it maybe inspires you and encourages you to go ahead and jump in and take your first deal down. You know, we want to talk about who this is for today, and it's somebody that's got a W-2 job, has some income. Maybe you've got some savings, but you know there's more than just a 401k when it comes to investing and building true wealth. We're primarily going to focus on the small multifamily singles. I know, Jake, you've got a bigger one that you own, so we can touch on that a little bit. But we really want to keep it down to the first-time buyer that's going to look at that first property. So we're not going to be talking 80-unit complexes and stuff. So we want to get right into what to look at before you even consider your first property. So, Jake, what is it that we need to be looking into before we even buy our first one?
There are some pretty important things that you should have a pretty decent understanding of on your own personal finances before you really start diving deep into any numbers or looking at properties as investment properties. The first one I would say is as simple as your credit score. What is your credit score?
True.
Are you currently at a 430 credit score, or, and things are falling apart and you haven't paid your bills? Well, maybe you should start there. There are a lot of people, though, that just don't honestly know what their credit score is. They don't pay any attention to it. They go about their business, they work their job, they pay their bills, and it's like out of sight, out of mind, kind of.
For sure.
So that would be a good first step. Find out what your credit score is, because banks are going to look at that one singular detail. You also need to have a certain amount of cash on hand. You always want to have, I say 3 to 6 months held back for your personal expenses that you're not paying any attention to, that's just sitting there in case of an emergency. We call it an emergency fund.
Yeah.
And then some money set aside that you're chunking into regularly that you're going to use as this down payment for a property.
Yep.
Now, the thing I would recommend for most people that are getting started, that maybe are young, they're single or newly married, and they're trying to figure out this real estate game, in my opinion, the best way to go about your first property is to house hack. And that, what I mean by that is you buy a small multifamily. To your point, we're talking kind of 2 to 4 units.
Yeah.
People should understand that 4 units and under is considered residential. 5 units and above is considered commercial. So you're going to probably, for most people, want to stay in that 1 to 4 unit range. And for the sake of this conversation, house hacking would pertain more so to 2 to 4 units.
Yeah.
Now, you can house hack in a single family home. Say you're a single guy, you have a 3-bedroom home that you're buying, 2 empty bedrooms, you want to rent those to other college kids or something to live in those rooms, and they pay you rent, and that pays your expenses. But essentially the idea is, on a house hack, you buy, call it a duplex. You live in one side, you rent the other side out, and it teaches you so much about this industry. You learn how to deal with tenants. You learn how to fix problems. You begin to create a community around you of repairmen and experts in different fields that you can call upon if you need them. And then as you grow a portfolio, you already have those people in your back pocket.
Yeah.
So I would say house hacking is incredible, not just for the sake of having somebody in a unit that teaches you a lot and pays for your rent, but it also, you can purchase your first home using an FHA loan, which means you only have to put 3.5% down on it, not 20%. You don't have to have tens of thousands or even $100,000 in savings to get started in this game.
Yeah, if you own your first property personally, it allows a lot different flexible financing options and less money down, like you're saying.
Yep. Now, there are some rules and some caveats that you'll want to look into. The primary one is that just you're supposed to live in the property for at least a year.
Yep.
So when you go into a loan like that, you need to have that understanding. I'm living in this side. I'm getting 3.5% loan. I only have to bring 3.5%, I should say. And then, somebody else is going to live in the other side and essentially pay a majority of, if not all of, the expense of this mortgage, and I get to live here for almost free.
That's good.
It's a really good way to start. You also want to make sure you understand what DTI is. DTI is the abbreviation for debt to income ratio. And what that basically is a lender is going to want to see that your debt is about 43 to 45% of your gross income. So you can do that calculation. What do you make every month? What are your expenses? Is it 43 to 45%, give or take? Because when you go talk to a bank, that's what they're going to look at. They want to know what your debt to income ratio is. So those are just a few things to get started.
That's good.
With, kind of preparing yourself for what would come next in the investment game.
And then I got last one for that part about before you get into your first one is we talked about financing. You're going to be talking to banks and lenders. I think more importantly, you need to connect and network with people that are already doing real estate or already investing in properties, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead and when you are talking to the bank and you're looking at your DTI and you're talking about your cash on hand and stuff and you're learning these things, go out and find out people in your community that are doing it and get close to them.
Right.
So when we talk about picking your market and your property type, there's a lot of considerations around that. I think we've found that there is still a lot of value in some of these smaller towns. And I think that that's not going to last much longer because I think even the big boys and the buyers, because you can buy anywhere now. So you're starting to see demand pressure on even in small towns now. Like there's more people doing it. There's more people able to buy it. So location does matter though. So make sure when you start to look at picking your first property and executing on buying your first one, that you look at the location. Where's the neighborhood, right? The quality of unit, the quality of the neighbors. And if it's going to rent, your rent demand, you can find that out pretty easily by seeing how much rental demand there is when there's a post or if there's a housing shortage in your area that you can see in the housing report. Things like that will tell you that this is where I want to buy my first rental because you know it's going to rent and you're going to be able to have a screening process because of the selection you have.
I would definitely encourage people to buy locally if at all possible because you learn so much from being right around the corner from your property. It's much more difficult to purchase something out of state or out of town and then try to figure it all out from there.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, the challenges compound on top of themselves.
It does.
In that regard. And there's going to come a time when you probably have the capacity to handle that, but for the most part, not the first time.
Don't start with your first one too far away because it is a different ball game.
Right.
And so looking at your property type comparison, different properties offer different exit strategies, different pivots, different values. So if you're looking at multi is great. It's going to have value. But in a single family home, for example, where you would buy it, rent a couple rooms out, is going to be much easier to resell. So there's considerations about buying that style property. There's what's known as, a lot of investors know this one, the 1% rule. And this is where your rent is 1% of the property purchase price, at least. I like to see mine 1.3 to 1.5. So you divide that monthly rent by the purchase price of the property. That percentage there is going to tell you. Anything that's under that 1%, you're paying to basically be a landlord. So you're giving your time and you're not making any money doing it.
So let's break that down just slightly. And we've talked about this in previous episodes, but I want to just break down those numbers for a quick second. For the sake of simplicity, say you're buying a $100,000 house, right? You want that house to rent for $1,000 a month minimum. And what you're saying is you want that $100,000 house to sell for, or to rent, monthly for between $1,300 and $1,400 a month, which is not unreasonable necessarily. 3-bedroom, 2-bath home, whether you can find it for $100,000, now that's the question.
It's finding the deal for sure.
But being able to rent it for those numbers is somewhat reasonable for a family to be able to pay. So that's kind of a baseline, high level, just to run your quick numbers. Is this even worth digging further into?
Yes. That's the number you run before the numbers.
Yes.
Like that's the one in your head. You go, oh no, that's way off. And you move on because it's probably not even going to be worth your time.
Yep. Let's talk through for just a second. Single family homes are very easy to purchase and they're very easy to sell.
Yep.
So you can buy a single family home, you can rent it for a number of years. That tenant will pay down the mortgage for you. You'll be able to get the tax benefits, the depreciation, all the benefits. And then when you're ready to sell it, you can just sell it again as a single family home.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a rental to the next person. I have done that in my career. I have a handful of single family houses and I'll own them for a half a dozen years, rent them, let them pay themselves down, take the value that I need from them and then sell them. And then I can put that money, the equity that I get back from the purchase, into maybe a larger property,
right,
or into a commercial deal or whatever the case is. But
which should be a whole other episode because you're talking 1031 exchange, right?
Yeah. We won't go into that. That's a whole different thing. But and then you kind of hit that sweet spot with a duplex.
Yes.
Duplex is becomes multi-unit, but you're still residential. Triplex the same way. The 3 and 4 units are pretty sweet because they still qualify for residential financing, but the cash flow is much higher. So depending on what you can purchase the 3 or 4 unit for, especially if you plan to house hack and live in one of the units, only have to come to the table with 3.5% down, and then you have somewhere between 2 and 3 additional units that you can rent out to others that pay all those expenses for you. That's really a great way to go if you can make it happen. But I would say duplexes are the sweet spot because they're a lot like residential in that they're super easy to resell.
Yep.
Everybody wants a duplex.
Yep.
It is so easy, but where the numbers make the most sense in the residential space are going to be more than likely on a cash flow basis are going to be the 3 and 4 unit space, 3 and 4 unit properties, I should say.
Agreed. So now that we've talked about the number that decides if you're going to even look at the numbers, let's start talking about the real numbers. So when we dive into, you find a property, you went ahead and looked at location, looked at property style. You're like, this one makes sense. You've got your personal finances in order enough that you're ready to pull the trigger. That doesn't mean you just buy it because you found it. There are numbers to consider before you were to pull the trigger on buying that first deal. This is right where we're going to have you guys be willing to go out and look some of these up because we could spend a whole episode digging into these. But some of the first numbers you're going to look at when you're underwriting a deal. And what I mean by underwriting is you've now taken the property and now you need to do a deeper dive on the financials. And so you're going to be taking your rent and then you're going to look at, so that's going to be your income. And then you got to look at all your expenses, whether you're paying utilities or you're going to have property taxes, insurance, all those costs have to come out. So we're at the underwriting stage. And some of the numbers to consider in your underwriting are your gross rent, your vacancy, your operating expenses, and your NOI.
Which is?
Your NOI is your net operating income, which is your income less your expenses, but it doesn't include your debt service, which is your loan payment. So you're going to look at that number. You're going to look at cash on cash return.
So cash on cash return is basically your annual cash flow divided by the total cash invested. And most experienced investors are going to want to see this between like an 8 to 12%. on the first deal. And what we mean by that is, think of it in terms of stock market. You have money invested. What are you getting back for the money that you've put into the stock market? Say you have a 401k and you make 8% on average on your 401k investments per year. Same is true for real estate. When you put $20,000 down on a property, what are you making back for that $20,000 that you've put into it? Are you getting 8% on that 20 grand? Because the bank is taking the majority of the risk. They're putting 80% of the, call it between 70 and 80% of the money down, which is what's so great about real estate. You don't have to come to the table with 100% of the money like you do when you're buying stocks, that sort of thing. In real estate, the bank's taking the majority of the risk. So if you're qualified, you come to the table with 30 or down even sometimes to 20%, depending on your bank. And what are you getting for that amount of money that you're investing in the deal? That's what your cash on cash return is. I also want to say, to your point, talking about some of the numbers where you said gross rent, what is just the big picture rent that you're going to get for the property? You want to subtract from that a vacancy percentage. Most people do somewhere between 5 and 10%. They expect a vacancy rate over a year span of 5 to 10%. What we mean by that is, at the end of the year, the person that you rented to moves out. It takes you a little bit of time before you're ready to re-rent it. So that gap in time, you have no rent. So you need to subtract that from how much rent you're bringing in overall. Then your operating expenses, you're going to want to budget somewhere between 35 and 40% of your gross rent. And then the NOI, which net operating income, is the gross rent minus the vacancy and then minus the expenses. So just to give a high level view of what those numbers, how it actually plays out, you'll have to go do the actual calculations. And like Sean said at the beginning of the episode, we could talk about this for weeks. So we have to kind of stop there and move on. Otherwise, it'll just go down a huge rabbit trail. So cap rate is the next one, which I don't think we need to hit too hard, because that's something that a lot of people aren't going to pay a lot of attention to when they're first getting started.
Certainly not for buying. It just has to do with how you would value the property when you got to a point of selling, and understanding how investment properties are valued, where simply the equation is just taking your NOI divided by your purchase price. So it's going to offer some percentage. So when you go to resell, you would take your current NOI at that point and then divide it by a percentage to see what your purchase price could be. A reasonable percentage for a cap rate in our market is 7 to 10%. So it's simple math, but look it up. I'm not going to sit here and beat this one to death either, but cap rate matters in regards probably more so to both purchasing but also resale.
Yeah. Vacancy and CapEx, this is one that folks tend to overlook that are just getting in the game far too much, and it can be a killer. It needs to be something that's on your radar. You need to calculate a certain percentage for vacancy, which we just talked about, as well as CapEx. And what CapEx is are capital expenses. They're the big things. That's going to be like a roof that needs to be replaced down the road that you're not prepared for, a water heater or furnace, some kind of a structural issue, things that are going to be big expenses. A light fixture, a hardware item like a doorknob or something, those are just ongoing expenses. But you need to have a CapEx fund in place that you put money into out of the rents every single month, and it just sits there so that when the roof needs replaced, you don't even have to think about it.
Yeah, and that is for the CapEx is for the big ones, but having the reality and understand when you go into this space and you're going to buy your first one, even those small things add up. And so you don't want to go into this with the false sense that your first property, you're going to make a bunch of profit. No. I think on my first unit, I bought it, and I'm pretty sure that whole first year I went backwards. I had enough repairs and fixes and money in it that there wasn't any profit left if you had ran it over a year. And that just came with the cost of the nickel and diming, this fix, that fix, and this thing. It adds up. So just having a realistic perspective when you go into deal one.
But we are talking about this from the perspective of somebody who has a W-2, who has additional income. And so it's not detrimental to that person necessarily. In fact, you get value from that. Keep in mind that you get to write off everything that you're putting into the property.
A lot of write-offs. And the lessons, we talk about it a lot. The tuition was invaluable on that first deal. Nothing really went super bad, but it just... making nothing off it wasn't overly exciting, but man, did I learn a lot.
The education that you get is like a 4-year college degree, and you pay far less for it in most cases than you would if you went to a $25,000 a year college.
Yeah. And if you feel like you're there, shoot the shot. I ran into somebody again the other day at an appraisal I was at, and the person was like, yeah, my dad and I talked about rentals for years, but we just don't want that phone call in the middle of the night about a water heater being broke. And I'm sitting here, and I remember having those same thoughts. But now that I'm in it, I realize those are so few and far between. They make the mountain out of the molehill. Mm-hmm. That is the small part of the portfolio and the scaling. Yes, it happens. Yes, it's frustrating. But it's not like I lay in bed every single night and I'm like 2 a.m, I'm getting a call about something. No. It's very, very few and far between. And so it's just another thing where like, think through it, plan, be ready, and then take action. Like we love saying that, take action and buy that first one. So now we're going to talk about making the offer and due diligence. We're going to talk about getting to yes. You're ready. You found it. You ran the underwriting. It's all kind of making sense, and you're willing to take the risk. It's important that you have an idea on what your offer needs to look like and then what it is going to be, and making sure you stand close to that. It's not about offering what they are selling it for. It's offering it what it's worth and what aligns with your strategy, right? So don't just buy it to buy it, because there's guys out there that have way different strategies. It's tough to be out here and compete in this space because somebody's just going to buy it no matter what it costs, just to own the asset. But if you're starting out and you are trying to build some income to grow a business, to have this be profitable, you got to buy a deal because it's got a cash flow. Some guys out there aren't looking for that. So know what your offer structure needs to look like, why, and then stand on that offer. There's always another deal. If you're hunting and you're looking, there's always another deal.
Yeah, to your point, there's a certain amount of balance between aggression and action taking and wisdom and a slower pace.
Yep, which we're going to talk about in our next episode, I think.
Yeah.
That's about the type of doer you are.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that one's coming up. You guys will have to listen to that one. But hearing what you said kind of made me think about that. Like, we really drive home being an action taker. Mm-hmm. But there's also a certain amount of value in having that resolve to make a yes decision, but also coupling that with, it doesn't have to be this one.
Yeah.
It can be the next one. If I don't get this one, I don't have to be devastated, and I don't have to pay 20% more than I intended to pay based on my numbers, just so I get it. It's okay. There's another one. Yep. Take action on that one.
And the other side of that is, don't buy something because it's cheap.
Yeah. We've both been in that boat, right?
Let's go to that. Looking back now, like, one of my biggest mistakes starting out was I bought whatever was available.
Most people do.
And it's just, you get excited, you want to build, and so I buy. It's like, that's not always the right move either. So as you continue to look into securing that first one, look at your offer. I get inspections. I know we differ on this a little bit.
I did when I first started.
Right.
And I would advise somebody to do that.
Yes. You've got a lot more seasoning and experience to go in and know what to look for. But get an inspection, especially on deal one. If you're starting out, inspections are expensive. Nobody wants to write a $400 check, $500 check to have somebody look at a house that they're trying to scrape money around to buy to get their first deal. But really, the power in an inspection is a negotiation afterwards. Maybe they do find something. Well, you just saved $5,000 on that offer you had, and you've got justification behind it, and you had to spend $400. That's an investment.
Yeah.
Looking at rent rolls and leases, you need to make sure that you get copies of the actual leases.
From the previous owner.
Don't let somebody tell you what rents are. Get copies of leases before you submit an offer. That way you know, because it's going to tell you need to know utilities. The guy may tell you rents are $900 a unit, but he's not telling you that you pay all the utilities, and then you buy the thing, and then you get the leases, and it's like, whoa. And so you need to know what's on the lease. So
there's so many rabbit trails that we could go down.
There are.
With this kind of stuff.
I'm like stomaching myself right now, like, shut up,
go
to the next note. And then, renegotiate, which is going to come from those leases, the inspection, and then your offer structure. Because if you can understand the numbers like NOI and things like that, your cap rate and around what that offer looks like, you have reasoning behind what you're offering. Just throwing out an arbitrary number does not have a lot of value. Sound like the expert and know the information you need to know to present the offer. It puts a lot more negotiating power in your side.
The value, I would say, also in coming alongside somebody who has at least done this one or two times, the more they've done it, the better if you have somebody in your circle that you can connect with.
Yeah.
But just finding somebody who can kind of mentor you on the do's and don'ts and maybe how they would do it differently. Maybe they've done 1 or 2 deals and they're like, now looking back on it, I wish I would have done the first deal this way or changed that thing. The value in that is tremendous.
Yes, learn their lessons.
So connect yourself with somebody. Don't think you have to do it all alone and you can just listen to a podcast where 2 guys talk about it for a half an hour and then, okay, I'm ready to do it. Like, find somebody in your circle who's done it a couple of times and sit down with them and just have a chat. It's amazing the amount of investors that are so willing to pour into somebody else who wants to invest. They're everywhere. Yep. It's crazy.
I found a lot of it, and I found a tremendous amount of value. It's been better than any book or podcast I've watched, is sitting with guys in my area that are doing it that can share. Yep. So when you're at the table now, you made your offer, have your attorney review everything with you, especially for your first one. Just make sure the paperwork's right. There's a lot of good people out there, but there are also some people that aren't out for your best interest. So have an attorney review it. So we looked at property, we got our finances in order, we found one, we underwrote it, we're ready to buy. What's funny is you think you got there. The truth is now the actual work starts. Yes. Right. So now we get to close. We get to buy the deal. So you're at the closing table now, but now the work begins. So what does that look like? Like when we talk about we got our deal.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean the work starts now? Like, why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Believe it or not, one of the things I get questions the most about is whether somebody should buy a property in their own personal name or in an LLC. And I view this way. An LLC separates your personal ownership from whatever it is that you're purchasing in an investment or a business. However, you do not have to buy something in an LLC. Mm-hmm. You can buy it in your own personal name, and that's okay. Now, especially if you are a high net worth individual and you own a lot of things in your own personal name, you may not want to be buying stuff in your own personal name to start. Yeah. You may want to separate it into an LLC. But if you're young and you have no real assets and you're just trying to get established, I would say personally, don't worry so much about the LLC at first. Yeah. Like, figure out the numbers, start to learn how this business works, buy a property or two. You can always move that property
you can transfer
title over to an LLC. Mm-hmm. Now, there's a clause in the bank that blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of details and stuff, but just know that that's a detail that doesn't really need to be such a concern.
Right.
You know,
not on deal one for sure. Good point.
You do want to separate your finances. You want the things in your rental property to be separate from the things in your personal finances. So keep those separate. You want to set up a system for tenant screenings. You do not want the first person that comes to you and says, hey, I have the cash and the deposit in hand. I'll rent it tomorrow. Yep. No, that's not a good idea. Set your tenant screenings up and screen people well.
Yes, screen them
I
well.
would personally rather let a unit sit completely empty
100%.
For a month than to put the wrong person in there, have the place destroyed, they don't pay their rent, and it takes months to get them out.
Yep. I was
Leave it empty.
Just telling the guy the other day, it's like, I've had pretty good luck with tenants, but I know that's from a thorough screening process.
Yes, absolutely. You want to view your lease in detail. Written leases are important. You want to make sure that everything's in there. And I would actually advise you to get with an attorney about that same process. They know the area, they know the state that you're buying in, and they're going to be able to give you something probably that they've already written that is clear and defined, and all you have to do is just tweak a couple of small things.
It'd be great to have a real estate attorney that already owns properties.
Oh, wait, we have one of those. That's great. Property management tools are a must in today's world.
Yes.
Don't try to do it on your own with a paper and a pen. Like, there's so much software out there that's
they're affordable.
Yes.
Easy.
Yes. It makes life so much easier in this space. And you really, I would say, to couple all that together, you just need to have a different mindset, a mindset shift. This is not your home necessarily. It's an investment property. Mm-hmm. It's a business. Even if you have a W-2 and you're just buying a couple small investment properties to kind of offset your income and have some tax write-offs and stuff, that's all well and good, but you still need to run it and have the mentality of it being a business, and I run it accordingly. So those things are important. Do you have anything to add to that?
Just, well, you actually kind of touched on it right there at the end. I think when you do get into your first property and you're dealing with people and you're dealing with tenants, to remember, like, because it's a business, they may come to you personally, but you get to hide and blame the business. If you have process systems in place, when you get to that operational point of owning investment properties, you just say, this is business policy.
Yep.
I tell my tenants that all the time. If I send something or a notification or an update or a rent increase for their lease renewal, it is simply, this is just process. I understand your frustration. I understand nobody likes things to go up in cost, but this is process and it's part of the business.
Yeah.
Because it can't be personal, or you go on emotion. You can't go on emotion when you're running a business.
Absolutely.
So I guess that would be the last point I would want to add on that one when you get to the operation side of it.
Yeah. Yep. So what are some action steps that people can take today or this week that can begin to take them down the road of getting prepared to purchase their first property?
Budget. Personal budget.
Yeah, that's a great
start.
start.
Count the people that want to do these things and don't know even what their income and expenses are or how much they can save a month into in a savings account. You need to get your credit score figured out. You need to sit down and see what your debt is, but write down a budget. Write it down and get in front of you. We all have a budget in our head. People love to use that. Well, I know about where I am. I know about where I'm at with my finances. Write it down. It'll shock you when you really go through your statements and see what you are spending every month, every week. So get your numbers right, and then just start looking for listings. And what I did before I started, I practiced underwriting. Do the research on the numbers. Find out what they mean. Find out how to underwrite. I underwrote deals off of Realtor.com that I wasn't even going to buy. So just be willing to practice a little bit. Play, You don't have any money in it yet, and you're learning a skill set that you're going to need to use to buy an effective first deal.
Yeah, there's so much value in just that one point that you just made. Run the numbers on lots of deals.
Yep.
Even if you have no intention of buying those deals, it begins to work that muscle. And like we all know, you don't build muscle by sitting on the couch eating Doritos.
Yeah.
You build it by going to the gym and taking action and doing that thing. And it doesn't happen in a day.
No.
It doesn't happen in weeks. It happens over a long period of time. The same is true working the muscle of rental ownership and what your process needs to be to buy the right property and then manage it properly.
Yes.
So begin to work that muscle day in and day out. When you have free time, sit down, start running numbers, even on properties that you don't have any intention of buying, because it works the muscle that makes you better at doing that thing. And when the right unit comes, you'll know it.
Yeah,
You'll know it.
When you're looking at these deals and you're running this practice play of underwriting, don't make the deal make sense. Run deals that don't make any sense at all. Run them because your eyes will get it, and you'll start to, like you said, connect the dots.
Yep.
Then make sense of the deal through your process.
It begins to be just the way that your mind works.
Yes.
After you do it for a while,
my
you
gosh.
just look at something and it's like an automatic kind of. I guess that's true for a lot of people with things that they're good at or they're interested in.
It becomes like second nature. You don't have to think about it too much.
That's the way real estate is. This looks complicated and hard to comprehend, but when you begin to just start, you find that your mind comprehends it much quicker than you would think. And then when you look at a property, you begin to run those numbers in your head kind of unknowingly.
Yep.
Like it's just like, I know that, I can't spend $200,000 on that rental property because there's no way I'm going to get $2,000 a month out of it.
You got it.
It's just like
that's it.
It's weird, but it's true. And that's the 1% rule.
Yep.
And then from there, you take a deeper dive and make it more complicated. And you're like, well, if I do this and I do this and I calculate these numbers and that number down there, that's what I want to get to. And this property provides that. I'm ready to pull the trigger on this one.
That's good.
I would also encourage people, become friends with your local banker. Like call the credit unions or your local banks in town and stuff. That's something that I've found tremendous value in. And I've brought my bankers to you and to some people that we've had on the podcast I've sent to my bankers. And the fact that I have a great relationship with them means that I can just stop into their office, knock on their door and say, hey, I got a couple questions for you. And they're like, yep, come on in. Let's talk about it.
It really helps.
It helps so much.
Because they're framed around they already know your story.
Yes.
Why do you have to go in and tell different people the same whole story to get that relationship? So I think there's tremendous value in that.
There's so much value in the relationship that you build with your banker because, like I said before, they're bringing 80%, we'll call it 70 to 80% of the purchase price of the property you want to buy to the table.
For sure.
That's significant. you better be their best friend. You know what I'm saying? Like, people think that they should just walk into a bank and say, hey, I want to talk to somebody about a loan. What, you're not going to give me $500,000? Why not? This bank is terrible. I'm going to another one.
Yeah.
You didn't cultivate a relationship.
Yep.
Start there today as you're working through the numbers and the process of building this thing, and build those so simple
funny.
Relationships.
I had lunch with my lender a couple of times before we ever did the first deal.
Yep.
I was letting him know what I was planning on doing, what I had learned, what I had known, and how I was going to do it, and basically get information to what he needs.
Yes.
So that I made sure when we got to that point, he was equipped also. But we had relationship before the first deal, and it was really valuable.
You'll find that the banker will tell you a lot of things that they expect, or what their institution's expectation is. You know, their heart for lending to you may be, yes, I think you're a great guy. I want to, you know, provide help to you and get you into the market, and we'll get you a couple of deals.
Yeah.
But their institution that they're working for is saying, listen, we have these 3 rules that we can't deviate from. And if this person's not qualified for those, I don't care how much you like them or how qualified, or, you know, how you think that this is going to work for them. We can't do it.
Yep.
Period. So having a relationship and communicating directly with your banker will help you to understand how to move forward with the financing.
That's good.
I will say in closing that the first deal is the hardest one for everybody.
Everybody. Oh my gosh.
It was for us. But the thing about it is action cures fear. The issue is fear that I'm going to do something wrong. I'm going to make the wrong decision. I'm going to own this property that's going to be a disaster for me. But the first one's the hardest one. And you realize very fast it's not the catastrophe that you think it is in your head right now.
That's good.
And action will cure that fear. So step out, take action. These principles that we've given you today are a great start to push you in that direction. And you can get in the weeds for days on this stuff, but you don't need to necessarily. You need to start with the information that we've given you, and it'll take you a long ways. We hope that this has been valuable to you guys. We would love to listen to your story and get some of your information and help encourage you in a direction. If you have questions about any of this information, you want to dive deeper into it, feel free to reach out to us and leave us a chat. Tell us what you're interested in, what kind of business, and what kind of property, and we'll hopefully be able to help you in some regard. That's our goal, and our heart is to come alongside you and encourage you and give you the information you need. Hopefully this was a blessing. We love you guys. We look forward to the next one. See you later. Thanks for joining us today on Courageous Stewards, where legacy meets leadership and faith fuels the journey.
If this episode stirred something in you, share it with someone who's ready to step boldly into their calling. Subscribe, leave a review, and stay connected as we continue to explore what it means to lead with conviction, serve with excellence, and build with eternity in mind.
So until next time, keep showing up, keep stewarding well, and remember, courage isn't the absence of fear, it's obedience in motion.